Hello, students. How's it going, Bearcats? Or any other random student anywhere in the world that happens to be watching this? I know there's about 200 of you that viewed my last video, and I only have 126 students. So that leads me to believe that I have made a whole bunch of new friends. Oh, I can't wait to monetize this channel. Anyway, I'm here with my dog Gidget. She is ready to teach you guys how to write this DBQ. Now, I hate this topic. I hate the reform movements of the early 1800s. It is my least favorite thing to talk about in APUS history. That might be an over exaggeration. There are other periods I hate as well, but this one drives me nuts. But the College Board loves to test on it. Now, in my mind, I don't really see the College Board going with this specific topic on the AP exam, but I've been wrong before. The reason why we're going to do this as a practice, though, is what happens when you have to write a DBQ where the documents don't really give you a lot of concrete details. And the essay is a little bit more dependent on what you say about what's going on rather than the documents themselves. So this can happen sometimes. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Make sure you guys look at the document down below. And again, that is my office chair. I have not had enchiladas lately. That is just my office chair. So that being said, make sure you guys are using the document down below as you go through this. And whatever device you're going to take the AP exam on in 2020 is what you should be working on right now. I did this on a computer because that is what I'm used to using. So you should do this on a computer as well. I really, really recommend that you guys do that. I don't care if your generation likes cell phones more. You're going to be able to do this easier on a computer. So find one, use one. If you don't have one, steal one. No, you can contact the College Board or possibly your school site to check out a device. Okay, all that being said, let's dive in. So we'll start by looking at the prompt. Evaluate the extent to which reform movements in the U.S. led to an expansion of democratic ideals from 1825 to 1805. Oh, let's probably have a number there at the end. Let's say 1854. 1855. What the heck? Okay, so putting this into English, what were the reform movements and did they make things better for the average American? This is actually a more nuanced question than it looks. At face value, you might just say that reform movements um, expanded rights for certain Americans, and that's great. But like the College Board wants a little bit more depth than that. Yes, there were a bunch of new reform movements, but did they actually change anything? That's what you have to discuss. Okay, so what you're going to do, I'll give you guys 3 minutes. Go ahead and outline and think of as many things that you can think of that happened during this time period that you can put into a chart. Go ahead and pause the video, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, it's been 3 minutes, and I'm sure that your life has changed as dramatically as mine has in the last 3 minutes. Let's go ahead and look at what I put in my outline. And again, this isn't everything, but there's a lot in here. So the main idea behind these reform movements at this time period is that we can improve society. There's also going to be an expansion of voter rights, which your textbook calls political democratization, right? Remember, it leads to Andrew Jackson. We've got the Seneca Falls Convention. If you're going to talk about voter rights, well, you got to talk about women trying to get voting rights. We have the rise in abolitionism. We have Nat Turner's Rebellion, speaking of slaves trying to get their freedom. We're going to have some prison and insane asylum reforms, which sounds fun. We're going to have education reforms. There's going to be a push for temperance, which is, of course, the limiting of alcohol consumption. We're also going to have this is all happening during the Second Great Awakening, so maybe you might want to talk about the rise of Mormonism or other popular religions in America. And then finally, you could talk about your utopian communities, like your sex cults, like the Shakers in the Oneida community, and this video just got demonetized. But the basic idea here is that reform movements made things better and more democratic for some. Okay, excellent. Now what we got to do is read the documents and then add them into our chart. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a couple of minutes to try this on your own, and then I'll go through each document. So go ahead and pause the video and read through the documents and put them in your chart where you think they belong. I'll see you on the other side. Now, let's go through the docs and see if we can put this essay together. There aren't a ton of concrete details this time, but the themes and ideas need to be explained. And remember, we don't have to use everything in the chart, but the more that we use, the better. Right, Gidget? Right. I used every document. I'm amazing. Why can't you guys be as good as me? Thank you. That's how my dog sounds in my head, by the way, in case you didn't know. Anyway, let's go ahead and go through each document. So document one, William Lloyd Garrison. I don't have to read this because I know William Lloyd Garrison wrote The Liberator and that he is a fierce abolitionist. I don't have to read this. Now, granted, I probably should, but do I really have to? Probably not, because I've already seen the word emancipation. I've seen 2 millions of our people enslaved. I don't really have to read this, and I'm going to save time by not reading this. Ooh, wait a minute, Mullen. No, it's fine. It's cool. You already know William Lloyd Garrison. He wrote The Liberator. He's a fierce abolitionist, and this essay is already talking about abolition. I can already throw this into my essay because I know that's a major reform that people are pushing for during this time period. So I'm going to save some time. Moving on. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ugh. I hate this guy. I mean, I'm sure he's nice, but like, I just don't enjoy anything he ever wrote, and it always shows up on Jeopardy, and it drives me nuts because I don't want to have to read anything by him to be able to go on Jeopardy. Anyway, if you were to read this document, you're going to see that, especially towards the end, the idea here is that we can make a better society. We can revise the whole of our social structure, the state, the school, religion, marriage, trade, science, and explore their foundations in their own nature. Basically, I am going to use this document as the introduction to my essay. Now, I know I've told you in the past you should never put a document in your intro, and I still firmly believe that, but I couldn't think of anywhere else to put this document, and this document kind of sets up what the scope of the essay is about. We should intentionally try to make a better society. So I'm actually going to tie that into my intro, even though that breaks my own rules. What are you going to do? Document three is Horace Mann. Now, Horace Mann is going to talk about education. Education's not in the national constitution, which means it's up to the states. So he's going to be pushing for education reforms. Um, but these reforms are only going to be so successful because they are really going to be done individually at a state by state level. In fact, I'm reading a book right now about the American South before the Civil War, talking about like the divide in white society between the poor and the rich. Well, the rich intentionally made it that way the poor couldn't go to school. That way the rich could control them. The domination of the plantation class in the South wasn't just about owning slaves. It was also about the rich whites keeping the poor whites down. Anyway, it's a whole book. You could read it. That's what I'm doing over my social distancing from the rest of the world, otherwise known as my high school years. Heyo. So yeah, this is going to be about education reform, which we already have on our chart. Document 4, we've looked at this document before. It discusses the stages of alcohol abuse. And of course, what's most important to note here is the woman and child that are being left behind as the man drinks so much and then kills himself. So that's going to be, of course, about temperance. All right, Doc 5, Dorothea Dix. Okay, so this is a little long, this document, and she's talking about basically rehabilitating people that are basically the word they used back then was insane. Back in the day, what they used to do was just throw like people that didn't fit in society into like rooms and just like let them die there. What she's saying is, hey, we should make programs to rehabilitate these people to give them some semblance of a life and maybe find a way to make them a productive member of society. This is basically what we've done with Icahn. I'm pausing for your laughter. 3 more seconds. 2, 1. Okay, good. You're back. So the idea here is we should use our resources not to punish people that don't fit in, but to make a society where people that don't quite fit in can still live a happy life. So this is going to be about insane asylum reforms. But of course, you read your textbooks, so you know that's all in there. let's look at our outline now. Okay, so this is where the documents line up. You'll notice I put Garrison and the Liberator in there because I didn't put that in my chart initially, but I got that info from the document. So I want to bring that in. This is essentially where I'm going to go. So now what we have to do is actually like outline this essay. Now, I want you guys to pause the video and start outlining this on your own. However, your thesis is going to look a little bit different than the way your thesis used to look. The ones that we practiced so far were the although this, ultimately that, so, right? Now, your thesis is going to be a little bit different because your essay is going to be a little bit different. Because you have so many specific events to talk about, it's better to go with the through 1, 2, 3 thesis. But remember, it's not just enough to say through 1, 2, 3 blank happened. You got to go more along the lines of through 1, 2, 3 this led to that. And remember, our overall argument is that maybe these democratic reforms didn't make society better for everyone. You got to kind of find a way to say that in your thesis. So let's go ahead and dive in. Or sorry, you guys go ahead and pause this video, and then I'll see you on the other side where I go through how I would outline this essay. Okay, we are back. Here is what I'm thinking. My intro paragraph, I'm going to talk about the Industrial Revolution, making it so that way fewer people needed to farm. That's kind of a nuanced take on the Industrial Revolution, but it does kind of fit the story. So because of the specialization of labor, we don't need everybody farming to feed everyone, which means people can do other things. In the midst of doing other things, they're going to say, hey, why do we have the society that we have? Let's make it better because now we can. There's also going to be, of course, the Second Great Awakening, the idea that we can make a better world for ourselves. And I'm going to tie this into Emerson's document 2. My thesis looks like this. Through major reform movements, including the push for abolition, temperance, and education reforms, the early 1800s led to a societal change in the US. However, those reforms would not reach every American equally. So the rubric says that you have like a historically defensible thesis, and they also want it to be like a little complex. So by throwing this however in there, I'm making a more complex argument. We tried to do X, but really we only got so far because Y. Writing a thesis like that shows a in-depth thought about history, which the College Board likes. My first body paragraph is just going to be about abolition. I'll talk about Garrison. I'll bring in Nat Turner's revolt. Body paragraph 2 is going to be about temperance with document 4. Body paragraph 3 is going to be about education and asylums. And body paragraph 4 is actually going to kind of be a conclusion. But one big thing that none of the documents talked about was political democratization and the Seneca Falls Convention. So I know a lot about that because I read that document in Mr. Mullen's class. So I'm going to bring that in. Okay, go ahead and pause the video. You got to time yourself on the AP exam this year, so go ahead, take 30 minutes and write this on whatever device you are going to take the AP exam on. I recommend doing this on a computer, which is what I would do. You know, if it were me, I'd split screen a computer. I'd have a Word document on one side with all of my notes that I've taken in my outline. The other side, I have the window that I have to write this thing in, and I'd go ahead and write this. By the way, supposedly at the end of April, we're gonna get the like a test of what the system the College Board's gonna use is. So you guys will get a chance to do that. But we'll talk about that whenever I see it, and you'll see it after I do. So I'll let you know. Anyway, go ahead, pause the video. You have 30 minutes, and then we'll look over my sample. Have fun. Ah, it's been 30 minutes. Why do you always growl when I get to the essay, Kidge? Every time I get to the essay, she gets mad. Anyway, I hope you guys have all enjoyed writing that essay. I watched the Simpsons episode. Um, I'm apt to do that. Now, I did write this in less than 30 minutes. I legitimately timed myself this time. This one only took me about 24 minutes to write. Uh, Mainly because even though I hate this topic, I do kind of know it pretty well because I have to teach it in depth because the College Board always asks. Anyway, this essay is far from perfect. So if you are another teacher or a student in another world or whatever, and you're going to evaluate and judge me based off of this essay that I wrote, I am telling you it is not perfect. However, our goal is to get at least a 3 on the AP exam, right? So to get a 3, I'm assuming you got to get 5 or 6 points. Ideally, you get a 7, you're probably getting a 4. In my mind, this essay probably gets a 5 or a 6 minimum, maybe more. I don't know. I'm not a college grader. But if you guys could all rate a baseline essay that was like this, I'm pretty sure most of you would pass the AP exam, and that is our goal. So let's go ahead and read through this and figure out why. As the country began to industrialize in the early 1800s, fewer people needed to farm for survival. As people and factories began to practice specialization of labor, so too came differing opinions on what the social structure of the U.S. should be. A prominent ideal in the early 1800s was that society should be and could be changed for the better. Political thinkers such as Emerson began to question society and posited the belief that all aspects of society could be changed for the better. This, tied with the rise of popular religion with the Second Great Awakening, led many Americans to demand reforms from their government. Through major reform movements, including the push for abolition, temperance, and education reforms, the early 1800s led to a societal change in the US. However, those reforms would not reach every American equally. You'll notice that I put this in my thesis, which means I need to try to bring it up in every body paragraph that there is a reform, but it doesn't reach everyone. This is making a complex historical claim, which is what I'm trying to do here. Okay, let's keep going. One of the major growing problems in the United States was slavery. As the 1800s progressed, cash crop slavery grew, and plantation owners grew in political influence as well. With the rise of slavery came the rise of abolitionism. Championed by William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator, outside information, writers in the North began to write about the horrors of slavery and push for its removal in the United States. While the movement started small, soon more and more Americans in the North began to push for the end of slavery. Their calls, however, would fall on deaf ears. The number of slaves in the South only increased in this time period, and when slaves did try to rebel, like in Nat Turner's Rebellion, they were often put down harshly by whites. The slavery issue would not be solved in this time period. So, if you look at the structure from my thesis, we have change that people want, a reform, which is to get rid of slavery. They try, and it is kind of ignored. Again, notice the time period. The slavery issue isn't settled until the Civil War, right? Maybe it never was, but that's another story. You've taken my class, you know where this is going. If you haven't, hey, you missed out. Anyway, that is me talking about it and also modifying it by saying that this issue is not going to be solved at this time period. Moving on. Again, you'll notice these body paragraphs are short, and that's okay because I'm having multiple body paragraphs to explain the different movements. Anyway, a second major issue of this time period was the growing push for temperance. Alcohol consumption had increased dramatically in the early 1800s, which led to both moral and societal decay. As shown in document 4, alcohol consumption led to deviancy and crime and led to the women and children of the family being hurt the most. This cartoon was designed to persuade people to stop drinking, but it also was used as a marketing tool for the growing temperance movement. While alcohol consumption went down during this time period, alcohol abuse continued to rise and would be an issue for the US moving forward. Okay, this time with this document, I actually tried to analyze it twice. I talked about like what the purpose of the um, cartoon was here. So I talked about this the sentence after I mentioned the document. I'm trying to talk about the document's like purpose. Its purpose is to try to persuade people to stop drinking, but it has a dual purpose of also being a like a marketing tool for the growing temperance movement. One mistake in this paragraph I'm noticing now is that I never really defined temperance, which I probably should have. I should probably say temperance is the idea of limiting the consumption of alcohol. I had a couple minutes left over. I really should have proofread this essay a little bit better and made that correction. But I didn't. It's a mistake we're all going to have to live with, especially you. Body paragraph. Okay, so a third major issue of this time period was education and the insane. You like how I tied students with people that are insane? Because I kind of see you as the same thing. Anyway, as fewer people were needed to work on farms due to industrialization, a prominent belief at the time period was to have children be in school. If children were educated, they could further the gains that society was already getting during the Industrial Revolution. Reformers such as Horace Mann saw the benefit of education and wanted that system to be pushed throughout the nation. However, education was still handled on a state by state basis, and in many regions, students did not receive an education at all. Again, reform, talking about how it didn't reach everyone. At the same time, concerns grew over how to handle those not fit to be traditionally involved in society. Rather than cast them aside, Dix and other reformers wanted specialized institutions to work with and rehabilitate those in need. However, these reforms were hard to find, and were not common in the early US. Again, I'm kind of spinning my wheels to figure out how to get document 5 to fit. I don't love how I did it, but again, it's a timed essay and I had to bring it up somehow, so I did. I'm not in love with how I did it, but you gotta try. Okay, now I don't conclusion to this essay, but I gotta talk about something else I know that fits the time period. This is great outside information. So this also might help you earn this thing called the complexity point, which is just a fancy way of like the graders saying, hey, look, you know a lot about this time period, so we're going to give you an extra point just for being awesome. This is a paragraph that might help me earn that point, but if it doesn't earn that, it will help me earn the outside evidence points. Finally, voting became a bigger issue during this time period. In the 1820s, a concept known as political democratization swept the United States. Originally, only landowning white males could vote, but in the 1820s, the landowning restriction was removed. This allowed for more white men to vote and dramatically changed the voter base in the US, eventually leading to Jackson's election in 1828 as a candidate for the common man. However, this increase in voting did not extend to women. The Seneca Falls Convention pushed for women to get the right to vote, but their concerns fell mostly on deaf ears as the country was more focused on the looming Civil War. This shows that while there were more democratic reforms in this time period, they did not reach every American equally. I made sure that I added this last sentence to the essay because it's basically me restating the thesis and reiterating the point that there are going to be reforms, but they're only so successful. I try to make that point in every paragraph in some way because that is what my thesis said, but that's also kind of what the prompt wanted me to talk about. And there you have it. You are done with another DBQ. This could have been the third one that you've written in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully these videos are helpful for you. I've received some comments from students, both mine and other students, that have found these helpful. So thank you for that. I do try my best to do these, but we only have so many DBQs the College Board has released. So it does kind of limit the things that I can do in these videos. Um, Best of luck to you guys. I hope you're all staying healthy. I know that I am certainly trying to. I would love to walk my dog, but it is constantly raining, which is making it difficult. Uh, but maybe it's time to potty train my dog using a toilet. I've seen videos of like dogs and cats using the toilet in the house. I think maybe this might be my, you know, social isolation goal. Make it so that way the dog can just, go to the toilet, take care of business, flush it on its own, wash its paws somehow. Anyway, if it's a while until my next video, you know what I'm working on. Have a good one, kids. Go Bearcats.